Okay, so for BKT time sync, for use with WSJT-X, since this latest version of BKT time sync, it's now capable of transferring the location, the grid square location, to WSJT-X, which is a very nice feature if you're roaming. Otherwise, you would have to keep track of where you are and type in to WSJT-X your actual grid square.
So
This is gonna do it for you.
this doesn't matter if you have the G72 or the BDS dongle. It works identical.
Yes,
Okay.
it should work with the G72 and the G172.
Okay.
Okay. Other models, I'm not sure of yet because unless somebody gives me feedback on it, if they tried another version, I don't know if it works, and I don't like to promote something if one of us hasn't confirmed it actually works. In the case of the 172 and the 72, Igor's tried the 172 and the 72, and I've tried the 72. Okay. In order for this feature to work, your computer must have Microsoft.NET Framework 4.8 or later installed. You don't need to do anything with it. It just needs to be installed. Windows will do everything on its own from there. If you don't know if it's installed, run the following command from the command prompt. So to get into the command prompt, you just go down to your search, type CMD, hit enter, and it's going to put you into command prompt. Okay. And then it's a registry entry that it's looking for, but we're running it as a command, so you don't have to search through 14 million pages of your registry. It's going to come back with a quite lengthy entry, but when you look at the numbers near the end of what it spits out to the screen, you will see if it's running version 4 or not. If you do regular, if it says it's running Windows version 4, there's different, or .NET framework version 4. You'll see that some of the lines, the numbers, the version number will vary slightly. If you're doing regular updates and you see any of the version 4s, you can pretty much assume that you're up to date if you run any of the Windows updates, if you stay up to date on it. Okay, so run that command. I would recommend if you either type it out exactly as it is there. If you see a space, it is because it's a space. I didn't want to put an underline because an underline is a different character. Okay, and if you have PowerPoint, you could look at the you could cut and paste it from the presentation. You might even be able to do that from the PowerPoint, or yeah, from the PDF version. Okay, if it's not installed, you can download it from this link. It's the only one that shows up when you say you want to install it. Now, having said that, there's two caveats of .NET. One is the runtime. And all that is allows you to run things that require .NET. It doesn't allow you to write your own programs. If you want to write your own programs, you would want to click on the developer pack. And it will download the developer pack, which includes the runtime. And any program, any program, I'm not thinking of the right word right now, but if you write programs, you have different packages. You could write it in BASIC, you can write it in Fortran, you can write it in Java, you can, anything that Microsoft has in their developer pack comes with the developer pack. Okay. So, like I said, if you're not writing your own programs, you only need the runtime version, which will allow you to run programs that were developed through Microsoft.net. Okay, you don't need to configure it, you just need to install it. So when you download it, click install. When it says it's done, you're done. You don't need to do anything with it. BKT TimeSync will do everything it wants once it's installed. Okay. Okay, so configuration of BKT TimeSync for WSJT-X, that's when we want to go into the GPS configuration here and go down to WSJT-X here. And we want to click Auto Grid. So this is from within BKT TimeSync. Okay, we need to tell it port 2237. Don't worry about the dot that's in there. All it is the guy that wrote this is in Europe. In Europe, they use a different separator than we do in North America. We use comma, they use a dot. In this case, it doesn't even require the dot. Just ignore the dot when it puts it in. Address you need, or the IP you need is 127.0.0.1. And what we do is when we go into WSJT-X, we're going to set these same settings so that it knows what to advertise.
So you're saying, Daryl, if you don't put the dot, is it going to still add a space, or it's going to be two?
Just type in
without space?
2237. It may or may not put in that dot.
Okay.
If it does, ignore it. Don't try and get rid of it. Just accept that I put in 2237 and just let it do its own thing. Okay. It is probably going to show up with the dot, because if you really want to know why the dot's there, the guy that wrote this program probably forgot to say, I don't want separators. Okay. That's probably the only reason. Because it's there, it's not going to affect our operation. I'm just warning you that normally ports are written without a dot. So if you're aware of that, just ignore it. It's going to work with the dot. Okay. IP requires the dots. Type the dots in, because that's normal IP addresses. That's the way we identify and write down IP addresses. Okay. The send WW locator, if you wanted to manually force it to send it, you could click the button. In our case, it's going to do it for us. So you don't need to do anything with the button. Okay. Just so that you know, when we make all these changes, there's no save button for this program anywhere down below. As we make the changes, it automatically saves them. Okay. So that's the only configuration you needed for WSJT-X in BKT TimeSync, is that one line, those three entries.
Daryl, I have another question for you. Does the IP address comes in automatically, or I do have to enter my own IP address?
It might be recommended, but enter your own if it's not what you want. This is what you want. You want it to read a check mark beside AutoGrid. You want to read 2237 there, with or without a dot. Okay. And you want it to read 127.0.0.1 for an IP. You don't want it to read anything else.
Okay.
127, for those that don't know, 127.0.0.1, when you enter that as an IP, that is your local computer, the one that you're using with that IP. So anytime it sees that IP, it says, okay, I'm staying on my own computer. I'm not looking for another computer out there somewhere. I'm staying right here, right on my own computer. I'm looking for that address. Okay. Okay. So that's saying shop at home. Okay. And where am I going to shop at home? I'm going to look for this port number. So when we go into WSJT-X, we're going to say, hi, I want you to blab 127.0.0.1, and I want you to listen on this port to see if anybody's listening. Okay. So this is, it just lines up the two software. Okay. So the next one is, now we go to within WSJT-X, the FT8 software we're using, okay? And what we need to set is we need to go to File, Settings. So in the main window, you click on File, you look for the word Settings, and then you go to the Generals tab, which is off to the right here, and you see the Generals tab, General tab, Station Details, so that's the first box, and Auto Grid. So there's one little box there that says Auto Grid. Okay, we need to check that so that it knows that I'm going to use Auto Grid instead of the one written in this box saying My Grid. Okay, you do not have to delete this from the window. I've tried it both ways. It's not going to change it on you, but it's not going to interfere with where you're operating from. So I left mine in there. So when I turn off Auto Grid, I don't have to reset my home location. So if I'm at home, I just uncheck this and it automatically has my grid address. Do you have to? You don't have to. If you want to sort of save on computer resources where it's not always updating information that's never going to change, then that's why I uncheck it when I'm at home. Okay.
Okay, so you would leave it checked when you're at home, and let's say, for instance, you're moving around. Let's say you would uncheck it.
No, just the opposite. Okay. Auto grid means use auto grid. Automatically upgrade the grid is what that stands for.
Okay.
So if it's not checked, it's going to look in this box. If there's no check mark, it's going to look in this box and say, where are you? I'm at FN14ED. So when you're operating, have you operated FT8 yet, Claude?
No.
Okay, so on the main screen for operating FT8, when you want to contact a station, it'll automatically plug in your location for you.
Yeah, your
It gets
grid.
it
Okay, I
from
know.
this
Yeah.
box. It gets it from this box.
Okay.
Unless you check this box. If you check this box, then it gets it from your GPS, the other program.
So is it better to have that box checked and let it take it from the GPS then?
If you're roaming.
Only if you're roaming?
Well, it's not going to hurt. What's going to happen is if you're not roaming, it's going to always be updating information that never changes.
Okay.
So in my mind, if the information never changes, I just say, okay, save the computer resource, save it for decoding FT8 messages instead of sending my location every time when it never changes. If you don't like making changes in your software, leave it always checked if your GPS is always connected. If for some reason your GPS is not connected and you're on auto grid, it may not get the information. I have not tried that scenario. Okay.
Okay.
So if you're trying to use FT8 and it's not updating your location to share with others, then this is going to be where you're going to have to fix it right here.
So
Okay.
you have to take the auto grid check mark off then for FT8 if
Yeah,
you're
or fix your
at home.
GPS problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So within WSJT-X, and the reason I say that is because we're using different programs here, so it just keeps you within the right program. You need to set a reporting tab. So to get there, you go File, Settings, Reporting, and then we look for UDP Server. So down the page, down here, we see UDP Server block. Okay. The other stuff on the page doesn't matter. This matters for making this work. So what we need to do is in PKT time sync, we set our UDP, we set the server that it's looking for is 127.0.0.1. So now we're saying we want it to be a UDP server, which UDP server as opposed to a TCP server. UDP doesn't care if the message gets delivered. It just says, here's the message if anybody wants it. And then the other program is going to say, I'm listening for messages from that server. Okay. And what port it wants. If we told the other one to listen on 2237, so we better say we want to blab on 2237. So if other messages are happening on our computer from 127.0.0.1 on a different UDP port, the other program doesn't care. It only cares about messages on this port from the server. Okay. We wanted to accept UDP requests as well. And we wanted to notify on accepted. Notify we don't care about, but we want to, I have it checked because I have other programs that I told it to share information both ways, okay? Actually, this is actually one of those programs that we wanted to share because BK time sync is going to pass to this program the actual grid location. So it has to be accept. The other two boxes we don't care about, but definitely this one, okay, has to be checked in order for it to set the time sync. So three things here: set the IP, set the port, tell it to accept the requests. Okay. Okay. These syncs are only going to be pushed from BKT time sync location, only be pushed to WSJT-X when the time synchronizes. Remember I talked about the 60 minutes back in BKT time sync, check time every 60 minutes. If I left it set at 60 minutes, it's only going to synchronize my location when it checks the time. Okay. Therefore, you might want to set it, if you're roaming, you might want to set it more frequent to every 5 minutes, or if you're traveling fairly fast, you might want it every minute, depending on how fast you're traveling. If you're traveling fairly slow, 5 minutes is probably plenty. If location sync failed due to other programs using WSJT-X connection, BKT time sync will retry every minute until it sits. We'll retry. It'll keep retrying within the minute until a minute passes, and then it'll wait for the next time sync. Okay, what could interfere with what other software might interfere with this same port? Just to give you an example, JT Alert, if anybody's using it, it might have asked for shared information when at the same time that BKT time sync tried. In that case, BK time sync is just going to retry within that minute to share this information again.
Would Grid Tracker fall into that?
Is Grid Tracker just listening, or is it actually sharing information back and forth?
I would have thought it was sharing, wasn't it?
Like if it's, I'd have to load up. I didn't look at Grid Tracker. I have it loaded, but I didn't try it. If it's just looking at the information that WSJT-X is reporting, then it won't interfere because WSJT-X is just blabbing stuff out. It's not. But if it's actually taking in information, then it could interfere.
Okay.
So JT Alert works both ways because it'll actually change the colors on your WSJT-X screen. So that means that the only way for it to change the colors in WSJT-X is for it to be pushing stuff to WSJT-X. Okay, but I'm not sure. It might fall into that category. I'm not sure. That's something that I can check. I'll make a note. What about Grid Tracker? Okay. Okay. secondary port. Don't need it for what we're doing here, okay? So it's unchecked for secondary reporting. Okay, even though it shows some default information in there, not needed. You don't have to delete it, just make sure this is unchecked. Okay, and questions, if they haven't already been.
Can you start over the presentation?
Yeah, I was gonna ask
Just-
you, I was gonna
just
ask you
kidding.
if you'd come over and do mine for me.